engineer can cost the employer more than a contractor. Usually, in selecting EPC contracts, the employer spends more time, sometimes along with the engineer or sometimes separately, to identify a pre-qualified product. However, the same effort is not taken to pre-qualify an engineer. In most cases, the tradition in the industry is that large consulting, international consulting companies are presumed to have a strong contractual knowledge. But most of the times, this is not so. So why you have to be very careful in choosing an engineer is the engineer is not merely a supervisor of the project. They are contract administrators, decision makers, certifiers. On the whole, they are the gatekeeper of the contractual compliance with the entire project. So you have to be wise enough to choose a very strong engineer to protect the entire project. The engineer is the employer's first line of contractual defense. So under most standard forms of the contract, the engineer is responsible for, even though you don't use the term engineer, there are PMCs who exactly play the role of engineers in EPCs. So we can relate this term of engineer with PMCs, issuing instructions, certifying the payments, evaluating the variations from the contractor, determining the extension of times, whether they are excusable, non-excusable, compensable, non-compensable, assessing the cost claims with the actual backed up data, ensuring the contractual compliances under all phases of the contract. So in practice, the engineer's decision determines how the contract operates on a daily basis. So if these responsibilities are performed poorly, the contractor can quickly lose its intended structure. Poor instruction creates claim, obviously. A weak engineer often issues verbal instructions, unclear technical directions with ambiguities, so that it gives room for disputes and claims. Instructions without contractual authority, without the approval from the employer, or without the knowledge of the employer. So with these instructions, later conflicts with the contractual scopes and the contractor come up with additional cost, additional time. That creates a slowdown in the project and unrest in the relationship between the employer and the contractor. So poorly documented instructions will always end up in multi-million-dollar variation disputes. Delayed decisions trigger prolonged loss. Good leaders take faster decisions. Bad leaders take delayed decisions. So delayed decisions, like taking excessive time for drawing up quotes, for reviewing the method statements, deciding whether it's a variation or not, responding to the contracts, informations like RFIs, RFQs, etc. The project schedule suffers. These delays eventually evolve into claims, not only time claims, but also cost claims. Sometimes will result in loss of productivity, even though you are not able to visibly see the delays, it will result in disruption claims. Ironically, these costs are often paid by the employer, even though the delays originate from the engineer's case. Weak certifications create payment disputes. See, both the sides. Under certifying and legitimate work also creates disputes because this stresses the cash flow of the contractor. Or over certifying the legitimate work, sometimes the actual work is done for 40%, but the overall certification is for 50%. This will put a pressure on the employer. And reject valid variations. So if the variations are valid, it has to be validated and it has to be provided if it is required for the goodness of the project. Ignoring approved inspection records, delaying payment certifications. Delaying payment certifications will put the contractor's cash flow under stress, which in turn make the entire project stall and get delayed. This behavior pushes the contractor into financial stresses. It's like notice of suspension, reduced manpower on the site, or they may even end up in the arbitration proceedings. Poor claim evaluation strengthens the contractor's case. How? The first line of contractual defense is the engineer. When the contractor submits the claim, the determination has to be done by the engineer on behalf of the employee. So blindly rejecting it, that will be under questionable under legitimate litigations and arbitrations. So don't just reject the claim without any proper grounds or reasons. And be strict work on notice provisions. If the contractor has not given the notices properly, then you should work on it and you should try to reject based on that. And fails to analyze the delay causation. I have worked with certain PMCs and engineers who does not have a vast understanding of delay analysis. They understand either only prospective or they understand only prospective. They are not as informed to take which kind of methodology has to be selected. See, even today, I am speaking this in 2026. Most of the standard form of the contracts, most of the bespoke contracts does not specify the delay analysis methodology or doesn't specify which international standard it has to follow. So that's how 2026 is even now. So I suggest the contract drafters to include the delay analysis methodology because 90% of the project straight away delay. So you have to do a delay analysis. What delay analysis you have to do? Either you specify the delay analysis methodology inside the contract or specify the standard that has to be followed, like it might be an ACL protocol, delay and disruption protocol 2027, or it might be an AAC RPs, either 29R03 or 56R03. You have to specify it. And that knowledge must be with the engineer because you can't determine a delay analysis without the knowledge of how to do a delay analysis. Determining the delay analysis is the next stage of drafting a delay analysis. Then issuing poorly justified determinations. The determination of the delay analysis has to be very structured. Delay analysis is the first part of any claim. Any claim comes for the time, then it goes for the cost, except the variation claims. So when such disputes reach arbitrations, these weak determinations often collapse the side of the employees. Weak engineers destroy the employees' negotiation power. Now comes the real issue. How? A strong engineer protects the employer by maintaining strict contractual discipline, documenting all project events, issuing timely notices, controlling the variations, managing claims proactively. The weak engineer is opposite means. He allows informal decisions, fails to maintain the records, responds inconsistently, like their letters will be conflict to each other, creates contractual ambiguity. So once ambiguity enters the contract administration process, the employer's negotiation cushion collapses. The hidden financial impact. Now, the financial consequences of a weak contractor is much less than the actual financial consequences of a weak engineer or a PMC. They accumulate over a period of time. The variation escalations, the project value will exceed somewhere at the estimated cost completion will be 30 to 40%. I have seen projects which have spent 100% than the original cost. And it results in prolongation claims, disruption damages, arbitration costs, settlement payments. So a contractor may perform poorly and still be controlled through contractual mechanisms. But a weak engineer weakens the contract itself. The real reason for employers, what is the lesson learned? Employer often believes that selecting the lowest bidder contractor is the biggest project risk, which is not so. Selecting the engineer with a proper pre-qualification process, who has a strong contractual knowledge, who has a strong commercial awareness, who understands the cash flow, who understands how the projects work, who understands the psychology of the contractor, who understands how to determine a delay analysis, evaluating a client, and maintaining the relationship between the employer and the contractor is the most profound characteristics of engineering. Not just I'm being paid by the employer, I just screw the contractor, I just write some letters, I screw the project, I leave the project. No, that's not going to work. And PMCs have the mentality that they are being paid monthly or they are being paid lump sum for a project period. So what they are doing is if the project gets delayed, they enjoy the delay. Most cases, I'm not accusing all the PMCs. Most PMCs, which should not be. PMCs are the most expert people who sit on the top layer of the industry, and they are responsible for leading the industry, educating the employer, educating the contractor. In technical qualification wise, the people sitting in the PMCs are highly qualified. So they should act as leaders rather than they should act as another concern. So lead the projects with proper decision making, educate them, keep the relationship intact. You know that what are the issues going to happen in a project more than the contractor and the employer, because you have vast experience than an employer and the contractor on a particular project. So alert them that this is going to happen. A PMC who is not going to alert an employer on delays doesn't actually have an experience in projects. So form a delay task force on the day one. Worry about the contractor's cash flow, worry about contractor's profit, worry about the employer's damages if this project is getting delayed, and help both the parties achieve the goal. And you play an important role in developing the industry. Thanks for watching this video. Take care.